The unforgiving Montana sun beat down on Olivia O'Connor's face as she steadied herself atop the ornery mule, the dust of Bozeman's Main Street swirling around her skirts. It was 1878, and she had exactly $3 to her name, not nearly enough to start the new life she'd promised herself after fleeing Boston. "Steady now," she whispered to the animal, whose ears twitched with suspicion. Olivia had never ridden anything more challenging than a well-trained mare at her father's estate, but circumstances had forced many unwelcome changes. The mule purchased at a suspiciously low price had been her only transportation option. The wind picked up suddenly, sending tumbleweeds skittering across the street. The animal shifted nervously beneath her. Ahead lay the trail to the Turner Ranch, where she'd secured a position as a tutor, her last hope after the scandal that had destroyed her family's fortune and reputation. "Come on," she urged, giving the mule a gentle kick. "Just a few more miles." As they left town, the breeze strengthened into a proper gust. The ridge to the west of Bozeman was notorious for sudden wind that could knock a man's hat clean off his head. Today was no exception. A powerful blast ripped across the landscape, sending Olivia's bonnet flying and startling her mount. The mule reared suddenly, its front hooves pawing the air. Olivia clutched desperately at its neck, but the wind threw her off balance. She tumbled sideways, arms flailing, a scream caught in her throat as the ground rushed up to meet her. In that terrifying moment, something unexpected happened. A blur of motion, a flash of denim and leather. A man appeared from nowhere, diving toward her. He rolled across the dirt, intercepting her fall with his own body. They tumbled together in a cloud of dust, his arms wrapping protectively around her. When they finally stopped rolling, Olivia found herself staring into the bluest eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-bronzed face beneath a shock of sandy hair. To her astonishment, the stranger was laughing. "Well now," he drawled, still chuckling with evident relief. "That could have ended a lot worse for both of us." Lucas Irving had been having a perfectly ordinary day until he'd spotted the city girl struggling with that devil of a mule. The animal belonged to Silas Jenkins, who had a reputation for selling unsuspecting newcomers the most ill-tempered beasts in the territory. The woman had disaster written all over her, from her too fine clothes to her uncertain posture in the saddle. "Are you hurt, madam?" Lucas asked, helping Olivia to her feet. "Only my pride," she answered, brushing dust from her skirts. "Thank you, Mr. Irving, Lucas Irving." He tipped his hat. "And that ornery mule is halfway to the next county by now." Panic flashed across her face. "My belongings." "Everything I own was in those saddlebags." Lucas whistled sharply, and a magnificent chestnut gelding trotted up from where it had been grazing nearby. "We'll catch up to it. Dusty here is the fastest horse in the territory." He extended his hand. "Madam, I don't mean to be forward, but we'd better move quickly if you want to recover your things." Olivia hesitated only a moment before placing her gloved hand in his calloused one. What choice did she have? Within seconds, he'd swung her up onto the horse and mounted behind her. "Hold tight," he instructed, his breath warm against her ear as he reached around her for the reins. The horse took off at a gallop, and Olivia found herself pressed against the solid warmth of Lucas's chest. It was scandalously improper, but her practical concerns overwhelmed her sense of decorum. She needed those saddlebags. "What brings a lady like yourself to Bozeman?" Lucas asked as they rode, his voice raised against the wind. "I'm to be a tutor at the Turner Ranch," she replied. "Do you know it?" Lucas's laugh rumbled against her back. "Know it, I work there." "Foreman for the past 3 years. Ahead, they spotted the mule, which had stopped to graze on a patch of grass. Lucas slowed his horse to approach cautiously. "That devil threw you on purpose," he said. "Jenkins should be horse-whipped for selling him to you." "I'm afraid I had limited options," Olivia admitted. "My funds are constrained." Lucas dismounted smoothly and approached the mule with a confident stride. The animal eyed him warily but didn't bolt. With a practiced hand, Lucas grabbed the reins and soothed the creature. "If you're headed to the Turners, you can ride with me. We'll lead this troublemaker." "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose. It's no imposition. I'm headed there myself, and Mrs. Turner would have my hide if I left her new tutor stranded." As they continued toward the ranch, Olivia found Lucas Irving surprisingly easy to talk to. He explained that the Turner Ranch was one of the largest cattle operations in the territory, with over 10,000 acres and a herd of nearly 2,000 head of cattle. The Turners have two children, William, who's 10, and Emily, who's 8, smart as whips, both of them, but wild as untamed colts. Their mothers determined they get a proper education. And what of Mr. Turner? Olivia asked. A shadow crossed Lucas's face. Passed on last winter, pneumonia. Mrs. Turner's running things now with my help. I'm sorry to hear that, Olivia said softly. She's a strong woman. Lucas paused. Speaking of strong women, what's your story? You don't strike me as the typical schoolmarm. Olivia tensed. How much should she reveal? My father was in banking in Boston. There was a reversal of fortune. I needed to make my own way. Lucas nodded, seeming to understand there was more she wasn't telling him. Well, Montana Territory is a good place for fresh starts. No one much cares about your past out here, just what you can contribute. The sun was beginning its descent when they crested a rise, and the Turner Ranch came into view. Nestled in a verdant valley, it was larger and more impressive than Olivia had imagined. A sprawling main house of hewn logs stood proudly on a gentle slope, surrounded by numerous outbuildings, corrals, and a bunkhouse. Cattle grazed on the lush grass of the valley floor. It's beautiful, Olivia breathed. That it is, Lucas agreed, a note of pride in his voice. Mrs. Turner will be relieved you've arrived safely. She was beginning to worry when you didn't show up this morning. Guilt washed over Olivia. I was delayed in town trying to acquire transportation. Well, you're here now, that's what matters. As they approached, a woman emerged from the main house. Tall and straight-backed, with silver threading through her dark hair, Eliza Turner had the bearing of nobility despite her practical frontier clothing. Lucas, we'd given up on you for supper, she called, then noticed Olivia. And you must be Miss O'Connor. We expected you hours ago. I apologize for the delay, Mrs. Turner, Olivia began, but Lucas interrupted. Jenkins sold her that devil mule of his. Ridge wind threw her from the saddle just outside of town. Lucky I was passing by, Mrs. Turner's expression softened. That scoundrel, are you hurt, dear? No, madam, Mr. Irving caught me. Lucas cleared his throat. The cowboy rolled, took the fall, and laughed with relief when neither of us broke anything. Mrs. Turner's eyes twinkled with amusement. Well, that sounds like our Lucas, always in the right place at the right time. She gestured toward the house. Come in, both of you. Supper's waiting, and the children are eager to meet their new teacher. That evening, seated at the Turners' large dining table, Olivia felt a warmth she hadn't experienced since before her family's disgrace. The children peppered her with questions about Boston and books, and whether she knew how to ride a horse properly. William, Emily. Give Miss O'Connor a chance to eat her supper, Mrs. Turner admonished, though her tone was gentle. It's quite all right, Olivia assured her. I'm happy to answer their questions. Lucas sat across from her, his presence somehow both reassuring and unsettling. His eyes caught hers occasionally, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. After the meal, Mrs. Turner showed Olivia to her quarters, a small but comfortable room adjoining the children's nursery. You'll start lessons tomorrow, Mrs. Turner said. The schoolroom is in the east wing. I've ordered books and supplies from back east, but they won't arrive for another week or so. I have some materials in my saddlebags, Olivia offered. Good, the children need structure. Mrs. Turner paused at the door. I should warn you, Miss O'Connor, my children are spirited. Their father indulged them, and I'm afraid I've been too preoccupied with ranch business to be as firm as I should. I understand, Mrs. Turner. I'll do my best with them. Lucas speaks highly of you, and his judgment is rarely wrong. With that cryptic statement, Mrs. Turner bid her good night. Alone in her room, Olivia unpacked her meager belongings. Among them was a letter, the last communication from her mother before Olivia had left Boston. She unfolded it with trembling fingers, though she knew the contents by heart. Dearest Olivia, your father's actions have left us destitute and disgraced. I cannot bear to face society. By the time you read this, I will have joined him in whatever afterlife awaits those who take their own lives. Forgive me my weakness. Make a new life for yourself far from here. Your loving mother. Tears stung Olivia's eyes. Her father's embezzlement had ruined dozens of families before he'd shot himself in his study. Her mother had followed him days later. The scandal had been sensational, leaving Olivia with nothing but shame and the clothes on her back. Montana was as far as her remaining money could take her, and the Turner position had been a godsend. No one here knew of her disgrace. She could start fresh, rebuild her life, perhaps even find a measure of peace. A soft knock at her door startled her. She hastily tucked the letter away and wiped her eyes before opening it. Lucas stood in the hallway, hat in hand. "Pardon the intrusion, Miss O'Connor. I wanted to make sure you were settling in all right." "Yes, thank you, Mr. Irving. Everyone has been most kind." He nodded, seeming hesitant. "I've tethered that mule in the stable. Mrs. Turner says we should return it to Jenkins and demand your money back." "That seems fair." Lucas shifted his weight. "I also wanted to say, the children can be a handful, but they've good hearts. Their father's passing hit them hard." "I understand grief," Olivia said softly. Something in her tone must have revealed more than she intended, because Lucas's expression changed, his eyes studying her with new interest. "Well," he said finally, "if you need anything, my cabin is just beyond the bunkhouse, the one with the blue door." "Thank you, Mr. Irving." "Lucas," he corrected. "Out here we don't stand much on formality." "Then you must call me Olivia," he smiled, and something fluttered in her chest. "Good night, Olivia, sleep well." As his footsteps receded down the hallway, Olivia closed the door and leaned against it. Lucas Irving was undeniably handsome, and his kindness was genuine. But she hadn't come to Montana to find romance. She'd come to escape her past and build a simple, respectable future as a teacher. Anything else would be a complication she couldn't afford. With that resolve firmly in mind, she prepared for bed, unaware that fate had already set other plans in motion. The following morning dawned clear and cool. Olivia dressed in her most practical gown and arranged her hair simply. She had just finished when a knock sounded at her door. Emily Turner stood in the hallway, already dressed but with her dark hair in disarray. "Mama says breakfast is ready, Miss O'Connor," the girl announced, "and that you're to start our lessons after." "Thank you, Emily, I'll be right down." "Lucas is here too," Emily added with an impish smile. "He almost never takes breakfast at the main house." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sure Mr. Irving has ranch business to discuss with your mother," Emily shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe he wants to see you again." Before Olivia could respond, the girl skipped away down the hall. Children, Olivia reminded herself, often imagined romantic entanglements where none existed. Still, she took extra care with her appearance before heading downstairs. In the dining room, the family was already seated. Lucas rose when she entered, a gesture that didn't escape Mrs. Turner's notice. "Good morning, Miss O'Connor," Mrs. Turner said. "I trust you slept well." "Very well, thank you." Lucas pulled out the chair next to his. "We saved you some flapjacks. Bessie's are famous throughout the county." Breakfast passed pleasantly, with William and Emily dominating the conversation. Lucas contributed occasionally, his deep voice a counterpoint to the children's excited chatter. Olivia found herself watching him when she thought no one would notice the way his hands cradled his coffee cup, the laugh lines at the corners of his eyes, the quiet authority he exuded. "After the meal, Mrs. Turner led Olivia to the schoolroom, a bright space with large windows overlooking the eastern pasture. A blackboard hung on one wall, and several desks were arranged facing it. "It's not what you're accustomed to, I imagine," Mrs. Turner said, "but we've tried to provide the essentials." "It's perfect," Olivia assured her. "I'll prepare my first lessons while you round up the children." Left alone, Olivia organized her limited materials and contemplated her approach. These children had experienced loss and disruption. They would need patience and understanding, but also firm boundaries. William and Emily arrived with their mother, both looking slightly apprehensive. "Children, Miss O'Connor, will be your teacher from now on," Mrs. Turner explained. "I expect you to show her the same respect you would show me." "Yes, Mama," they chorused. Mrs. Turner nodded approvingly. "I'll leave you to it then." The morning progressed better than Olivia had dared hope. Both children were indeed bright, if somewhat behind in their formal education. William showed a particular aptitude for mathematics, while Emily's reading skills were exceptional for her age. At midday, they broke for lunch. The children raced outside to play before the afternoon session, leaving Olivia to review her plans. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear Lucas enter. "They didn't run you off yet," he observed, his voice startling her. "Mr. Irving, I didn't hear you come in." "Lucas," he reminded her, "and I've brought you some lunch, thought you might be hungry." He set a cloth-wrapped package on her desk. The smell of fresh bread and roast beef made her stomach growl. "That's very thoughtful of you." He pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "How are they doing?" "Quite well. They're intelligent children, just lacking structure." Lucas nodded. Their father let them run wild. He believed children should learn from nature and experience. "There's wisdom in that," Olivia acknowledged, "but they also need to read and write and understand figures." Exactly Mrs. Turner's thinking. Lucas watched as she unwrapped her lunch. "I'm riding into town this afternoon to see Jenkins about that mule. Would you like to come along? Get a proper look at Bozeman." The invitation was tempting, but Olivia hesitated. "I have lessons planned for the afternoon. The children always have riding practice after lunch. Part of their father's legacy that Mrs. Turner maintains." He grinned. "We could be back before they notice you're gone." It was reckless, impulsive, everything Olivia had resolved not to be, but something about Lucas Irving made her want to cast aside caution. "Let me speak with Mrs. Turner first." To her surprise, Mrs. Turner readily agreed. "Lucas is right, the children will be with the stable master all afternoon, and you should see more of Bozeman than just the dusty road in." An hour later, Olivia found herself once again on horseback, though this time on a gentle mare rather than the temperamental mule. Lucas rode beside her on his chestnut gelding, the late summer sun glinting off his hair. "You ride well," he observed as they approached town. Despite yesterday's evidence to the contrary, Olivia laughed. "I rode often in Boston proper ladies' mounts in parks with groomed paths, not quite the same as the open range. You'll adapt quickly. Most Easterners do, or they head back home. And which will I be, do you think?" The question slipped out before she could consider its implications. Lucas studied her, his blue eyes serious. "I think you're a stayer, Olivia O'Connor. There's a strength in you that this land recognizes." His words touched something deep within her. No one had ever described her as strong before. In Boston, she had been merely decorative, a banker's daughter expected to make an advantageous marriage and host elegant soirees. Her worth had been measured by her father's wealth and her family's social standing, both now destroyed. Bozeman in the daylight was a bustling frontier town. Main Street boasted several substantial buildings of brick and wood, a bank, a hotel, a general store, and multiple saloons. Horses and wagons crowded the dirt street, while pedestrians navigated the wooden boardwalks that fronted the businesses. Lucas led her to Jenkins' livery and feed at the edge of town. A weathered man with a tobacco-stained beard emerged from the stable as they approached. "Irving," he acknowledged with a nod. "What brings you to town?" "That devil mule you sold Miss O'Connor yesterday," Lucas replied, his voice hard-edged. "Nearly got her killed." Jenkins spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. "Can't help it if the lady can't handle a spirited animal." "It wasn't spirited, it was mean," Lucas countered. "And you knew it when you sold it to her." "No refunds," Jenkins declared flatly. Lucas dismounted and stepped closer to the older man. Though he didn't raise his voice, something in his posture made Jenkins take a step back. "She'll have her money back, and I'm taking that mule off your hands permanently. $20 for it, which is 15 more than it's worth." Jenkins looked like he might argue, but then his gaze shifted to Olivia, still mounted on her mare. Something like shame crossed his weathered features. "Didn't mean no harm to the lady," he muttered. "Fine, deal." The transaction completed, Lucas helped Olivia down from her horse. "Let's get you a proper look at Bozeman while we're here." They left their horses at the livery and walked along the bustling Main Street. Lucas seemed to know everyone, tipping his hat to ladies and exchanging friendly greetings with the men they passed. At the general store, he insisted on buying her a sturdy bonnet to replace the one lost in yesterday's tumble. The proprietor's wife helped Olivia select one that was practical yet becoming. "This suits you," the woman said approvingly. "Brings out the gold in your hair." Lucas's eyes met Olivia's in the small mirror. It does at that, he agreed quietly. Afterward, they stopped at a small cafe for coffee and pie. The place was crowded, but the owner ushered them to a small table in the corner. Best apple pie in the territory, Lucas promised, and he wasn't wrong. As they ate, Olivia felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. The weight of scandal and grief seemed lighter here, as if the vast Montana sky had room enough to absorb her sorrows. "Tell me about the Turners," she said. "I want to understand the family better." Lucas considered his words carefully. James Turner came out here 15 years ago with nothing but determination and a talent for reading the land. Built that ranch from scratch. Married Eliza when she came out to teach at the territorial school. He smiled at the memory. James always said she was the best thing that ever happened to him, well, her and the children. He sounds like a remarkable man. He was, honest, hardworking, fair to everyone who worked for him. His death hit us all hard. Lucas stared into his coffee. The ranch hands stayed on out of loyalty to him and Mrs. Turner, but it's been a hard year. "And you, how did you come to be foreman?" A shadow crossed his face. "That's a longer story than we have time for today." Before she could press further, a commotion erupted outside, shouting, then the unmistakable sound of gunshots. Lucas was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. "Damn," he muttered. "The Blackwood boys are at it again." Blackwood, local troublemakers. "Think they own the town since their daddy struck silver in the foothills." He turned to her, his expression serious. "Stay here while I see what's happening." "Lucas, I mean it, Olivia. Those boys are dangerous when they're drinking." He was out the door before she could argue further. Through the window, she saw him stride toward the center of the disturbance, where 3 young men were shouting at the sheriff. One brandished a pistol, firing it into the air. The cafe owner moved to Olivia's side. "Don't you worry, miss. Lucas Irving can handle those boys, did it before." "What are they so angry about? Who knows? With the Blackwoods, it's usually whiskey talking. Their father lets them run wild." Outside, Lucas had positioned himself between the armed youth and the sheriff. His posture was relaxed, but Olivia could see the tension in his shoulders. He was saying something to the young man, who gradually lowered his pistol. The standoff seemed to be resolving when the young man suddenly raised his gun again, pointing it directly at Lucas. Olivia's heart stopped. Without thinking, she rushed out the door. "Lucas," she cried. Her voice distracted the gunman just long enough for the sheriff to disarm him. The other 2 Blackwood boys, seeing their brother subdued, backed down quickly. Within moments, all 3 were being led away to the town jail. Lucas turned to find Olivia standing in the street, her face pale. His expression shifted from relief to anger. "I told you to stay inside," he said, striding toward her. "I thought he was going to shoot you," she replied, her voice trembling. His anger faded as quickly as it had come. "I appreciate the concern, but I can handle Frank Blackwood." His hand touched her elbow gently. "Let's get you back to the ranch before anything else happens." The ride back was quieter, both of them lost in their thoughts. The landscape seemed to Olivia both beautiful and dangerous, much like the man riding beside her. "I apologize for putting you in danger," Lucas said finally as the ranch came into view. "I should have known the Blackwoods might be in town." "You didn't put me in danger, Lucas. I chose to come." He glanced at her, a half-smile warming his features. "Yes, you did. And I'm glad of it, despite everything." They rode the rest of the way in companionable silence. As they approached the stables, William and Emily came running to greet them, followed more sedately by Mrs. Turner. "Miss O'Connor, Lucas," Emily called excitedly. "Did you see the town?" "Did you bring us anything?" Lucas laughed, dismounting smoothly before helping Olivia down from her mare. "Not this time, little miss, but maybe next trip." Mrs. Turner approached, her expression unreadable. "Children, go wash up for dinner." After they reluctantly departed, she turned to Olivia. "Did you enjoy your excursion?" "Very much, thank you. Bozeman is charming." "Except for the Blackwood incident," Lucas added. Mrs. Turner's eyebrows rose. "Oh, what happened?" Lucas explained briefly. To Olivia's surprise, Mrs. Turner seemed more resigned than shocked. "Those boys have been trouble since their mother died," she sighed. "James always said Ed Blackwood was raising wolves, not sons." She looked at Olivia appraisingly. "You've had quite an introduction to Montana life, Miss O'Connor. Indeed, Olivia agreed, though I find I'm quite equal to it. Something like approval flashed in Mrs. Turner's eyes. Good, dinner will be ready shortly. Lucas, you'll join us. It wasn't really a question, and Lucas nodded his acceptance. As Mrs. Turner walked back to the house, he turned to Olivia. You handled yourself well today, he said quietly. Most Eastern ladies would be demanding the next stage out after guns started firing. Perhaps I'm not most Eastern ladies. His smile deepened. No, Olivia O'Connor, I don't believe you are. The days fell into a pleasant rhythm. Mornings and early afternoons were devoted to lessons with William and Emily, who proved to be enthusiastic if occasionally challenging students. Late afternoons, Olivia often found herself with free time while the children had their riding lessons or helped with age-appropriate ranch chores. Lucas, she discovered, was a constant yet unobtrusive presence. Though his duties as foreman kept him busy, he seemed to find reasons to visit the main house more frequently than before. Sometimes he joined them for meals. Other times he appeared briefly to consult with Mrs. Turner about ranch business. Whenever their paths crossed, Olivia felt that same flutter in her chest, a feeling she was increasingly reluctant to examine too closely. A week after her arrival, a wagon delivered the educational supplies Mrs. Turner had ordered. Olivia spent an afternoon organizing them in the schoolroom, delighting in the new books, maps, and writing materials. She was so absorbed in her task that she didn't notice Lucas standing in the doorway until he cleared his throat. You look happy, he observed. She smiled, holding up a beautifully illustrated atlas. This is wonderful. The children will love seeing maps of places they've only heard about, including Boston. Yes, she replied, her smile faltering slightly. Including Boston. He entered the room fully, stopping beside her to examine the open book. You never talk about it, your home, I mean. There's not much to say, it's in my past. Lucas studied her face. Something happened, something that drove you all the way out here. It wasn't a question, but Olivia felt compelled to answer anyway. Yes, you don't have to tell me, he said gently. But if you ever want to, I'm a good listener. Their eyes met, and Olivia felt a sudden, powerful urge to unburden herself. Before she could respond, however, Mrs. Turner appeared in the doorway. Lucas, there you are. The fence in the north pasture needs attention before the cattle break through. He straightened, the moment broken. Yes, madam, I'll take a crew up there right away. As he left, he gave Olivia one last glance, a look that seemed to say their conversation wasn't over, merely postponed. That evening, unable to sleep, Olivia walked outside to the porch. The night was clear, stars blanketing the sky in a display more magnificent than anything she'd seen in Boston. The vastness of it made her troubles seem smaller somehow. Beautiful, isn't it? She turned to find Lucas approaching from the direction of the bunkhouse. It is, she agreed. I've never seen so many stars. No city lights to compete with out here. He leaned against the porch railing beside her. Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts. He nodded, understanding. Want to share them? Perhaps it was the cover of darkness that made it easier, or the simple kindness in his voice. Whatever the reason, Olivia found herself telling him everything: her father's crime, her parents' suicides, the scandal that had destroyed her family name, her desperate flight west. Lucas listened without interruption, his face illuminated only by starlight. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Thank you for trusting me with that, he said finally. I've never told anyone here. I was afraid that we'd judge you for your father's sins. He shook his head. That's not how things work out here, Olivia. People are measured by their own actions, not their family's past. Even so, I'd prefer if this remained between us. Of course. He hesitated, then added, for what it's worth, I understand running from a painful past. I've done it myself. Now it was her turn to listen as Lucas shared his own story, born to a wealthy New York family, educated at the finest schools, expected to join his father's banking firm. But the Civil War had changed everything. He'd enlisted against his family's wishes, seen horrors that still haunted his dreams. When he returned, he couldn't bear to resume the life that had been planned for him. So I came west, worked as a cowhand, learned the business from the ground up. James Turner saw something in me, took me under his wing. Lucas stared into the darkness. He was more a father to me than my own ever was. And your family in New York, my mother writes occasionally. My father disowned me years ago. He shrugged, but Olivia could sense the old pain beneath his casual gesture. I found a new family here. In the quiet that followed, Olivia felt a connection with Lucas deeper than any she'd known before. They had both fled their pasts, both rebuilt their lives in this wild, beautiful place. Perhaps that was why she felt so drawn to him. He understood what it meant to reinvent oneself. It's getting late, he said finally. You should try to sleep. Yes, she agreed, though she was reluctant for their conversation to end. Lucas walked her to the door. In the shadow of the porch, he paused, his eyes finding hers. Good night, Olivia, he said softly. Good night, Lucas. He hesitated, as if wanting to say more, then simply nodded and walked away into the darkness. The following week brought the first signs of autumn to the Montana landscape. The aspens began to turn golden, and the mornings carried a crisp chill that burned off as the sun climbed higher. Olivia found herself settling into ranch life with surprising ease. The children were thriving under her guidance, and Mrs. Turner had expressed satisfaction with their progress. Even the ranch hands tipped their hats respectfully when she passed, no longer viewing her as a city curiosity. And then there was Lucas. Since their nighttime conversation, something had shifted between them. Their interactions carried a new layer of understanding, a shared secret that bound them together. One Saturday afternoon, with the children occupied helping Bessie bake pies for Sunday dinner, Lucas appeared at the schoolroom door where Olivia was grading arithmetic exercises. Got something to show you, he said without preamble. If you're not too busy. Intrigued, Olivia set aside her work. What is it? It's a surprise. Bring a shawl, we'll be out until sunset. 10 minutes later, she joined him at the stables. He had saddled 2 horses, her usual mare and his chestnut gelding. Where are we going? She asked as he helped her mount. There's a place up in the foothills about an hour's ride. James Turner showed it to me my first year here. His eyes met hers. I've never taken anyone else there. The significance of his words wasn't lost on her. This wasn't merely an afternoon ride, it was an offering, a sharing of something precious to him. They rode side by side through rolling pastureland, then followed a creek into the pine-covered foothills that marked the eastern boundary of the Turner property. The trail narrowed, forcing them to ride single file, with Lucas leading the way. Olivia found herself studying the set of his shoulders, the confident way he handled his horse, the occasional backward glance to ensure she was managing the increasingly rugged terrain. Finally, they emerged from the trees into a small meadow nestled between 2 ridges. A natural spring bubbled up from rocks at the far end, forming a clear pool before continuing on as a narrow stream. Wildflowers still bloomed despite the advancing season, and the golden light of late afternoon bathed everything in a warm glow. It's beautiful, Olivia breathed as Lucas helped her dismount. James called it his thinking place, Lucas explained, tethering the horses where they could graze. Said a man could solve most problems if he sat quietly here long enough. They walked to a flat rock beside the spring, large enough for both to sit comfortably. The view stretched for miles, the Turner Ranch below them, and beyond that, the vast expanse of Montana territory rolling away to the horizon. I can see why it helped him think, Olivia said. It puts things in perspective. Lucas nodded. That's exactly what he used to say. They sat in comfortable silence for a time, watching the changing light on the landscape below. A pair of eagles soared overhead, riding thermal currents with effortless grace. I come here when decisions need making, Lucas said finally, or when life gets too complicated down below. And is life complicated right now? Olivia asked, her heart beating faster. He turned to look at her, his blue eyes serious. It's becoming so. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken words. Olivia knew she should look away, maintain the proper distance between them, but found herself unable to break his gaze. Olivia, he began, his voice low. I know you came here to escape your past, to build a new life. I respect that, but I find myself thinking about you more than I should. She should stop him now, remind him of her position of propriety. Instead, she said, I think about you too. Something like relief crossed his features. I don't want to complicate your new start here. If you want me to keep my distance, no, she interrupted, surprising herself with her vehemence. I don't want that at all. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers entwining with hers. The simple touch sent warmth coursing through her. I'm not a wealthy man, he said carefully. The ranch pays me well and I've saved, but I can't offer the kind of life you knew in Boston. Olivia laughed softly. I think you misunderstand what I value, Lucas Irving. That life is gone and I've no desire to reclaim it. Her voice grew serious. I want peace, purpose. Perhaps in time, happiness. And could I be part of that happiness, do you think? In answer, Olivia leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to his. It was bold, improper, completely unlike the proper Boston lady she'd been raised to be, and she didn't care. Lucas's momentary surprise gave way to response, his free hand coming up to cradle her cheek as he returned the kiss with restrained passion. When they parted, his eyes searched hers. Are you sure about this? No, she admitted with a small smile, but I'm willing to find out. He laughed then, a joyful sound that echoed across the meadow. That's a start. The sun was beginning its descent when they reluctantly mounted their horses for the return journey. As they rode, Lucas explained that Mrs. Turner was aware of his feelings. She said she saw it the day you arrived, he admitted, looking somewhat sheepish. Apparently, I'm not as inscrutable as I believed. And she doesn't object. To her ranch foreman courting her children's tutor, object. She practically ordered me to speak with you, he chuckled. Said she was tired of watching me moon about like a lovesick calf. Olivia laughed, though a shadow of worry remained. And the children, what will they think? They adore you already, Lucas assured her, though William may be disappointed. He told me last week that he plans to marry you when he grows up. Their laughter mingled in the golden afternoon light as they made their way back to the ranch. As autumn deepened, so too did Olivia's relationship with Lucas. They found moments to be together amid their busy days, walks after supper, Sunday afternoon rides, occasional trips into Bozeman for supplies. Mrs. Turner observed their growing closeness with quiet approval, while the children alternated between teasing and earnest questions about whether Lucas would now be living in the main house. Not yet, Emily, Olivia had explained, feeling her cheeks warm. Mr. Irving and I are simply getting better acquainted. Emily had rolled her eyes with all the worldliness of her 8 years. Mama says you're courting, and that means you'll get married someday. Word of their courtship spread through the ranch community. The hands treated Lucas with good-natured ribbing, while Bessie took to preparing his favorite dishes when he joined them for meals. Even in Bozeman, Olivia noticed a change in how people greeted them, a certain knowing look, an inclusive warmth that embraced them as a pair rather than separate individuals. For Olivia, who had feared she might never belong anywhere again after the Boston scandal, this quiet acceptance was precious beyond measure. The first snow fell in early November, transforming the landscape overnight. Olivia woke to a world of pristine white, the familiar view from her window rendered magical by the blanket of snow. The children were wild with excitement, begging to postpone lessons for sledding. An hour, Olivia conceded, unable to resist their pleading faces. Then back to your studies. Lucas found them at the bottom of a gentle slope behind the main house, cheeks flushed with cold and exertion. William was pulling Emily back up the hill on a wooden sled, both of them laughing. No invitation for the teacher, Lucas called, approaching Olivia where she stood watching. She smiled, her breath clouding in the cold air. I'm supervising, not participating. A shame, he said, his eyes twinkling. I was hoping to show off my sledding prowess. Before she could respond, William spotted him. Lucas, come ride with us. To Olivia's amusement, Lucas readily agreed, joining the children for several runs down the hill. His laughter mingled with theirs, deep and resonant against their higher pitches. Watching him play with the children, Olivia felt a tug in her heart, a vision of possibilities she'd thought forever closed to her after the scandal. When the promised hour was up, she called the children indoors despite their protests. Lucas remained behind, helping her gather the sleds. You're good with them, she observed. They make it easy, he replied. They're good children. They adore you, he paused, looking at her intently. And their teacher, what does she think of me? Olivia felt herself blush despite the cold. She thinks far too much about you, Mr. Irving. More than is entirely proper. His smile was slow and warming. I'm glad to hear it, Miss O'Connor, as I find myself similarly afflicted. He stepped closer, his gloved hand coming up to brush a snowflake from her cheek. The tenderness of the gesture nearly undid her. Olivia, he said softly, I know it's only been a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. The words hung in the frosty air between them. Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming joy. I love you too, she whispered. His kiss was gentle despite the passion she could sense beneath his restraint. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said simply. Not immediately, we can wait until spring if you prefer, but say you'll be my wife. Olivia closed her eyes, savoring the moment. 6 months ago, she had fled Boston in disgrace, certain that happiness was forever beyond her reach. Now, standing in the snow with this remarkable man, she felt hope blossoming anew. Yes, she answered. I'll marry you, Lucas Irving. His whoop of joy startled a flock of birds from a nearby tree, sending them fluttering into the crisp blue sky. They announced their engagement that evening at dinner. Mrs. Turner, far from surprised, produced a bottle of fine French champagne that her late husband had been saving for a special occasion. James would have approved, she said, raising her glass in toast. To Lucas and Olivia, may your life together be long and filled with joy. The children were delighted, though William expressed some confusion about whether this meant Lucas would now be their teacher as well. No, young man, Lucas laughed. Miss O'Connor will remain your teacher. I'll stick to cattle and horses. They're easier to manage than arithmetic. In the days that followed, plans began to take shape. They would marry in the spring, when travel was easier for the few guests they wished to invite. Lucas had been building a cabin on a parcel of land adjoining the Turner property land that James had deeded to him the previous year. It's not fancy, he warned Olivia when he first took her to see it, but we can expand it over time. The cabin was indeed modest, 2 rooms with a stone fireplace, simple furniture that Lucas had either made himself or purchased in Bozeman. But standing in the main room, Olivia could envision their life, their books on shelves, curtains at the windows, perhaps someday children's laughter filling the space. It's perfect, she assured him, meaning it completely. As winter deepened, the ranch settled into a quieter rhythm. The cattle had been moved to sheltered pastures, and the hands had fewer outdoor duties. Mrs. Turner used this time to catch up on business correspondence and planning for the spring calving season. Olivia continued teaching the children, though she now spent her evenings with Lucas when weather permitted him to visit the main house. They talked of their future together, of the life they would build, sometimes even daring to speak of the children they might have. I hope our daughter has your eyes, Lucas said one evening as they sat before the fire in the main house parlor. And I hope our son has your steady nature, Olivia replied, her hand finding his. It was during one such evening, with January snow falling gently outside, that Lucas received troubling news. A rider from a neighboring ranch arrived after dark, requesting to speak with him urgently. The Blackwood boys are stirring up trouble, the man reported, stamping snow from his boots in the kitchen. Word is they've been talking about settling scores with you, Irving. Lucas's expression hardened. What kind of trouble? The oldest one, Frank, he's been drinking heavily since his stint in jail. Blames you for the embarrassment. Says he's going to make you pay. The rider looked uncomfortable. Thought you should know. They've been asking around about the Turner Ranch, your habits. I appreciate the warning, Tom, Lucas said, walking the man back to his horse after he'd declined an offer to stay the night. When he returned, Olivia could see the concern in his eyes despite his attempt to hide it. How serious is this threat? She asked directly. Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. Frank Blackwood is all talk when he's sober, but dangerous when he's drinking. His brothers follow his lead. Should we notify the sheriff? I'll ride into town tomorrow, let him know. He took her hands in his. Don't worry. This isn't the first time someone's made threats. It usually comes to nothing. But something in his tone told Olivia he wasn't entirely convinced of his own reassurance. The following day, Lucas rode to Bozeman to speak with Sheriff Dawson. He returned looking grim. Frank Blackwood and his brothers left town 3 days ago, he reported to Mrs. Turner and Olivia. Their father claims they went to Helena on business, but Dawson doesn't believe it. They took rifles and supplies for a longer trip. You think they're planning something, Mrs. Turner said. It wasn't a question. I think we should be cautious, Lucas replied. Extra guards on the herd, no one riding out alone for now. That night, Olivia found sleep elusive. She kept thinking of the Blackwood brothers, armed and nursing a grudge against the man she loved. When she finally drifted off, her dreams were troubled by shadowy figures and the sound of gunfire. Morning brought heavy snow and fierce winds, trapping everyone indoors. Lucas stayed at the main house, using the time to review ledgers with Mrs. Turner while Olivia conducted lessons with the children. The forced confinement should have been cozy, but Olivia couldn't shake her sense of unease. The storm raged for 2 days before finally breaking. On the third morning, the sun rose in a clear sky, revealing a landscape transformed by several feet of new snow. The ranch hands set about clearing paths between buildings and checking on the cattle. Lucas prepared to join them, pulling on his heavy coat at the kitchen door. "Be careful," Olivia said, helping him with his scarf. He smiled, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. "Always, I'll be back for supper." She watched from the window as he mounted his horse and rode out with several hands, their figures growing smaller against the vast white expanse. A strange premonition made her call out, but the wind carried her voice away. The day passed slowly. Olivia tried to focus on her lessons with the children, but found herself constantly glancing out the window, watching for Lucas's return. When afternoon faded toward evening with no sign of him or the other men, her worry deepened. Mrs. Turner noticed her distraction. "The north pasture is a long ride, especially in these conditions," she said reassuringly. "They'll likely be late." But when supper time came and went with no riders appearing, even Mrs. Turner began to look concerned. She sent a stable hand to the bunkhouse to inquire if anyone had returned from the north pasture. The answer increased their anxiety. No one had seen Lucas or his companions since morning. "Something's wrong," Olivia said, staring out into the darkness. "They should have been back hours ago." Mrs. Turner's face was grave as she ordered lanterns lit and horses saddled. "We'll send a search party. They may have had trouble with the herd, or perhaps a horse went lame." Neither woman voiced the fear that hung between them. The Blackwood brothers might have made good on their threats. Olivia insisted on joining the search despite Mrs. Turner's objections. "I can't stay here wondering," she said firmly. "I need to help find him." Bundled against the bitter cold, she rode out with 4 ranch hands, following the trail Lucas had taken that morning. The moon was full, illuminating the snow-covered landscape with an eerie blue light that made shadows seem deeper and more threatening. They had ridden for nearly an hour when one of the hands raised his hand for silence. "Listen," he whispered. In the distance, barely audible over the wind, came the sound of a horse's whinny. "That's Dusty," Olivia said immediately, recognizing Lucas's gelding. "It has to be." They urged their horses forward, following the sound. As they crested a small rise, they saw a figure trudging through the deep snow, leading a horse that appeared to be limping. Even from a distance, Olivia recognized Lucas. "Lucas," she cried, spurring her mare forward. He looked up at her voice, his face breaking into a relieved smile despite the exhaustion evident in his features. "Olivia, what are you doing out here?" She reached him first, sliding from her saddle to embrace him fiercely. "You didn't come back. We were worried." The ranch hands caught up, surrounding them with the welcome glow of lanterns. In their light, Olivia could see that Lucas was pale with cold, his coat torn at the shoulder. "What happened?" she demanded. "Are you hurt?" Lucas shook his head. "Not badly." "Dusty stepped in a hole hidden by the snow, nearly threw me. I managed to stay on, but he wrenched his leg. Couldn't ride him, so I've been walking back." He looked around at the search party. "The others returned to the ranch by the lower trail," one of the hands explained. "Got back just after dark. They thought you were ahead of them." Relief washed over Lucas's features. "Good. I was worried when I couldn't find them after Dusty's mishap. And the Blackwoods?" Olivia asked, unable to keep the fear from her voice. Lucas's expression hardened. "No sign of them. But I found tracks near the north boundary, 3 horses where there shouldn't have been any." He turned to the ranch hands. "Double the guards tonight. I don't like it." One of the men offered Lucas his horse for the ride back, volunteering to lead the injured Dusty. Olivia insisted on riding beside Lucas, watching him carefully for signs that he might be hiding a more serious injury. "I'm fine," he assured her, seeming to read her thoughts. "Just cold and tired." But later, after they'd returned to the warmth of the ranch house and he'd changed into dry clothes, Olivia noticed him wince as he reached for his coffee cup. "You are hurt," she accused, moving to his side. "Let me see." Reluctantly, he allowed her to examine his shoulder. A deep bruise was forming where he'd struck something during Dusty's stumble, but nothing appeared broken. "You should rest," she insisted. "At least for a day or two." Lucas shook his head. "Can't, not with the Blackwoods possibly prowling our boundaries." His expression softened as he took in her worried face. "I'll be careful, I promise, but I need to make sure the ranch is secure." Olivia understood, though she didn't like it. The safety of everyone at the Turner Ranch was Lucas's responsibility, a duty he took as seriously as his love for her. The next few days passed in a state of heightened vigilance. Lucas increased patrols around the ranch boundaries, and no one ventured out alone. The children were kept close to the main house, their outdoor activities supervised and restricted to the immediate yard. It was William who first spotted the smoke rising from the direction of the north pasture. He burst into the schoolroom, interrupting Olivia's geography lesson. "Fire," he shouted, pointing out the window. "Something's burning up north." Olivia and Emily rushed to look. A dark column of smoke was indeed rising against the clear winter sky. Without hesitation, Olivia sent William to find his mother while she and Emily watched for any sign of approaching riders. Lucas and several hands had already seen the smoke and were preparing to investigate when William reached them. Mrs. Turner immediately ordered the ranch's fire wagon prepared. "It's too far for the wagon," Lucas argued. "The snow's too deep. We'll go on horseback, see what's burning and if it threatens the herd." Olivia watched from the porch as he and 6 armed men rode out, heading toward the ominous smoke. Mrs. Turner stood beside her, her face set in determined lines. "Get your coat," she said to Olivia. "We're going to the lookout ridge. We'll be able to see what's happening from there." The lookout was a small rise just behind the main house that offered a view across much of the Turner property. From there, they could see the source of the smoke, a lined shack that housed supplies for the hands working the distant pastures. "They're burning our buildings," Mrs. Turner said grimly. "Trying to draw our men out, thin our defenses." Olivia's blood ran cold. "A trap." "Yes, Mrs. Turner turned abruptly. "Come, we need to prepare." Back at the house, Mrs. Turner revealed another side of herself, the capable frontier woman who had helped her husband build the ranch from nothing. She unlocked a cabinet in her husband's study, removing several rifles and a shotgun. "Can you shoot?" she asked Olivia. "My father taught me," Olivia replied, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice, "though it's been years." Mrs. Turner handed her a Winchester rifle. "It's like riding a bicycle. The skill comes back when needed." She checked the weapon's action before passing it over. "Let's hope it isn't necessary." They positioned themselves strategically, Mrs. Turner in the front parlor with a view of the main approach to the ranch, Olivia in the kitchen that faced the rear. The children were sent to the root cellar with Bessie. Despite their protests, the waiting was excruciating. Through the window, Olivia could see the column of smoke in the distance, now beginning to dissipate. Of Lucas and his men there was no sign. An hour passed then too. The winter sun began its early descent, shadows lengthening across the snow. Olivia's hands were steady on the rifle, but her heart pounded with fear, not for herself, but for Lucas, riding into what might well be an ambush. The sound of hoofbeats finally broke the silence. Olivia tensed, peering through the gathering dusk. 3 riders approached from the direction of the burning line shack, moving slowly. "Mrs. Turner," she called. "Riders coming." She heard Mrs. Turner's footsteps in the hallway, then felt her presence at her side. Together, they watched the approaching figures. "It's Lucas," Mrs. Turner said finally, relief evident in her voice, "and Thompson and Wilkins with him." Olivia lowered the rifle, her knees suddenly weak with relief. As the riders drew closer, she could see that they were indeed ranch hands, but only 3 of the 7 who had ridden out. They met the men at the front door. Lucas dismounted wearily, his face grim beneath the coating of soot. "The line shack is destroyed," he reported. "But that's not the worst of it. They stampeded part of the herd into Fox Canyon. We lost at least 50 head, maybe more." "And the others?" Mrs. Turner asked. "Hayes, Dunbar, Miller, and Johnson, following the herd, trying to recover what they can," Lucas replied. "They'll be back after dark." "The Blackwoods," Lucas's expression hardened. "We found tracks 3 horses heading east. They're long gone, the cowards." Mrs. Turner nodded grimly. "Come inside, all of you. Get warm. We'll talk more once you've eaten." Later, after the returning men had been fed and the ranch secured for the night, Lucas and Mrs. Turner conferred in the study while Olivia sat with the children, reassuring them that the danger had passed. When Lucas finally joined her in the parlor, his face was drawn with fatigue but resolute. "I'm writing to Bozeman at first light," he said without preamble. "This has gone beyond pranks or threats. The sheriff needs to be involved officially." Olivia nodded, understanding the necessity even as she feared him leaving again. "Will they be back, the Blackwoods?" "Not right away," Lucas replied, sitting heavily beside her. "They've done their damage for now, but yes, I think they'll be back unless the law stops them first." She took his hand, noting the cuts and burns he'd acquired fighting the fire. "Be careful tomorrow." His smile was tired but genuine. "Always am, when I have you to come back to." The next morning dawned clear and cold. Lucas departed for Bozeman before sunrise, promising to return by nightfall. Mrs. Turner kept the ranch on high alert in his absence, with armed men patrolling the boundaries and everyone remaining vigilant. Olivia tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the children's sake, continuing their lessons while periodically checking the road for Lucas's return. By mid-afternoon, her anxiety was mounting. Bozeman was only a few hours' ride in good conditions. "He'll be fine, Mrs. Turner assured her during a brief break in lessons. "Lucas knows how to take care of himself." "I know," Olivia replied, though her worry remained. "It's just that you love him," Mrs. Turner finished with a small smile. "Yes, that does complicate matters." Dusk was falling when they finally heard a horse approaching. Olivia rushed to the window, relief flooding through her at the sight of Lucas riding toward the house. But her relief quickly turned to concern when she noticed he wasn't alone. "Sheriff Dawson is with him, Mrs. Turner observed, coming to stand beside her. "Good. That means he's taking this seriously." The men dismounted, handing their horses to a waiting stable hand. As they approached the house, Olivia could see the grim determination on both their faces. Lucas introduced Sheriff Dawson to Olivia, his hand resting protectively at the small of her back. "Sheriff Dawson has news about the Blackwoods," he explained. "I thought we should all hear it together." Over supper, the sheriff shared what he'd learned. The Blackwood brothers had been spotted in Virginia City, 2 days' ride from Bozeman, where they'd been drinking heavily and boasting about teaching Irving a lesson. "Their father claims he can't control them anymore," Dawson said, accepting a second helping of stew from Bessie. "But he's still financing their troublemaking. I've sent telegrams to sheriffs in neighboring counties, put out alerts for their arrest." "And in the meantime," Mrs. Turner asked, "my ranch and my people are at risk." "In the meantime, you stay vigilant," Dawson replied. "I've deputized Lucas here, and I'll be sending a deputy out to stay at the ranch until this is resolved." Lucas's status as a deputy sheriff explained the new star pinned to his coat, a detail Olivia had noticed, but hadn't had a chance to question. "It's temporary," he explained later when they had a moment alone. "Just until the Blackwoods are dealt with. And how will they be dealt with?" Olivia asked, not entirely sure she wanted the answer. "Legally," Lucas assured her, understanding her concern. "They'll face charges for arson and cattle rustling at minimum. That's enough to send them to territorial prison for years. If they're caught, they will be," he said with quiet certainty. "Men like the Blackwoods always make mistakes. It's just a matter of time." That time came sooner than any of them expected. 3 days after the sheriff's visit, a telegram arrived from Virginia City. Frank Blackwood had been arrested after a drunken brawl in which he'd nearly killed a man. His brothers had fled, but posses were searching for them. "One down, two to go," Lucas said when he shared the news. The news of Frank's arrest eased some of the tension at the Turner Ranch, though vigilance remained high. Lucas's deputy status was extended, allowing him to coordinate with sheriffs in neighboring counties while continuing his duties as foreman. As January gave way to February, life at the ranch began to return to something resembling normalcy. The children resumed their outdoor activities under supervision, and Olivia found herself able to concentrate on teaching again without constantly watching the window for threats. She and Lucas used the relative calm to continue planning their future. They would marry in April, when the worst of winter had passed, but before the busiest season of ranching began. Mrs. Turner insisted the ceremony take place at the ranch, with Reverend Mitchell from the Bozeman Church officiating. "James and I were married right here in this parlor," she told them. "It would honor his memory to see you two do the same." They gratefully accepted her offer. Lucas worked on the cabin whenever his duties allowed, adding a second bedroom and enlarging the main room. Olivia began collecting items for their household linens, cookware, the small comforts that would make the cabin a home. It was during a trip to Bozeman for such purchases that they received the news. The remaining Blackwood brothers had been captured attempting to cross into Idaho territory. Sheriff Dawson himself delivered the information as Olivia and Lucas were loading their wagon outside the general store. "They'll stand trial next month in Helena," he reported, all three of them together. "With the evidence we have, plus Frank's drunken confessions, they're looking at 10 years minimum." The relief Lucas felt was evident in the way his shoulders relaxed, the tension he'd carried for weeks finally dissipating. "Thank you, Sheriff. That's the best news we could have hoped for." As they drove back to the ranch, Olivia felt as if a shadow had lifted from their future. "It's really over," she said, leaning against Lucas's shoulder as he handled the reins. "It is," he agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Now we can focus on what matters: our wedding, our life together." The weeks that followed were filled with preparations, both for spring calving and for the upcoming wedding. Mrs. Turner ordered fabric for a new dress for Olivia, insisting it was her wedding gift. Bessie began planning the wedding feast, consulting with Olivia about her favorite dishes. Lucas rode into Bozeman one day in early March and returned with a small velvet box. Inside was a gold ring set with a modest diamond, surrounded by tiny sapphires. "It reminded me of your eyes," he explained as he slipped it onto her finger. "The sapphires, I mean." "It's beautiful," Olivia whispered, blinking back tears. "Perfect, like its wearer," he replied, kissing her gently. As their wedding day approached, Olivia found herself reflecting on the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this place. 6 months earlier, she had been fleeing scandal and grief, her future a terrifying blank. Now she was preparing to marry a man she loved deeply, surrounded by people who had become a new family to her. The day before the wedding, a letter arrived from Boston, the first communication Olivia had received from her former home since her departure. She recognized the handwriting of her mother's closest friend, Mrs. Eleanor Winthrop, and opened it with trepidation. "My dear Olivia," it began. "I hope this letter finds you well and settled in your new life. Boston society has moved on to fresh scandals, and your parents' tragic end is now seldom mentioned. I write to inform you that your father's affairs have finally been settled. While most of his estate went to his creditors, as executor of your mother's small inheritance, I have set aside a sum for you, a modest amount, but perhaps enough to ease your way. If you will provide an address, I shall forward it to you immediately. I think of you often and pray you have found some measure of happiness in your new surroundings. Yours sincerely, Eleanor Winthrop." Olivia sat motionless, the letter trembling slightly in her hands. Mrs. Winthrop's kindness was unexpected. She had been one of the few who hadn't immediately distanced themselves from the O'Connor scandal. "Bad news?" Lucas asked, finding her still staring at the letter some minutes later. "No," Olivia replied, looking up at him. "Unexpected news, but not bad." She handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his expression thoughtful. "Will you accept it? This inheritance?" Olivia considered the question. 6 months ago, she might have grasped desperately at any financial lifeline. Now, the prospect of money from her old life seemed almost irrelevant. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "It feels like reaching back into a life I've left behind." Lucas nodded, understanding. "You don't need to decide now. Whatever you choose, I'll support you." She smiled, taking the letter back and folding it carefully. "I'll think about it after the wedding. Right now, I have more important matters to consider, like becoming Mrs. Lucas Irving tomorrow." "The best decision you'll ever make," he teased, pulling her into his arms. "The easiest, certainly," she replied, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. Their wedding day dawned clear and mild, an early spring blessing that allowed them to open the windows of the Turner home, letting in fresh air and the songs of returning birds. Olivia prepared in Mrs. Turner's bedroom, assisted by Emily and Bessie. Her dress was simple but elegant ivory satin with lace at the collar and cuffs, the skirt falling in graceful lines. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Turner said, fastening a borrowed pearl necklace around Olivia's throat. "Lucas won't know what hit him." Emily giggled, carefully placing a circlet of early wildflowers on Olivia's upswept hair. "Lucas has been smiling all morning. William says he looks silly." "Your brother thinks all romantic matters are silly," Mrs. Turner observed dryly. "He'll learn differently someday." Downstairs, the parlor had been transformed for the occasion. Evergreen boughs brought fragrance and color to the room, while candles stood ready to be lit as the afternoon waned. Chairs had been arranged facing the large front window, where Reverend Mitchell would conduct the ceremony. Guests began arriving mid-afternoon, neighboring ranchers and their families, shopkeepers from Bozeman who had come to know Olivia during her visits, ranch hands in their Sunday best. Sheriff Dawson arrived with his wife, both offering warm congratulations. Lucas waited nervously by the window, resplendent in a new suit purchased especially for the occasion. His blue eyes were bright with emotion as William, acting as his best man, offered last-minute encouragement. At precisely 4 o'clock, Mrs. Turner began playing the small piano in the corner of the parlor. The assembled guests rose and turned expectantly toward the hallway. Olivia appeared on the arm of Thompson, the oldest of the ranch hands, who had volunteered to give her away in the absence of any family. Her eyes immediately sought Lucas, finding him watching her with such naked adoration that her breath caught. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. Olivia was conscious of Lucas's hands holding hers, warm and steady, of the Reverend's sonorous voice pronouncing ancient vows, of the children watching wide-eyed from the front row. When Lucas slipped the gold and sapphire ring onto her finger as a symbol of their union, tears of joy threatened to overflow. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Mitchell declared. "Mr. Irving, you may kiss your bride." Lucas cupped her face gently between his palms, his eyes memorizing her features before he lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that promised a lifetime of devotion. The assembled guests erupted in applause, William's whoop of excitement rising above the general celebration. The festivities continued well into the evening. Bessie had outdone herself with the wedding feast, and music was provided by several ranch hands who played fiddle and harmonica. Lucas and Olivia shared their first dance as husband and wife to the strains of a waltz, their movements perfectly synchronized despite the modest surroundings. "Happy, Mrs. Irving," Lucas murmured, holding her close as they danced. "Completely," she replied, her heart too full for more elaborate declarations. As darkness fell, lanterns and candles transformed the ranch house into a warm haven against the spring night. Guests gradually departed, offering final congratulations and well wishes. The children, exhausted from excitement, were put to bed despite their protests. Finally, it was time for the newlyweds to depart for their new home. Lucas had arranged for the cabin to be prepared in their absence, fires lit, candles placed in windows to guide them home, fresh linens on the new bed. They said their goodbyes to Mrs. Turner, who embraced each of them warmly. "James would have loved to see this day," she told Lucas. "He always thought of you as a son." "I know," Lucas replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything, Eliza." To Olivia, Mrs. Turner said simply, "You've brought him happiness I feared he might never find. Thank you for that." The night was mild for early April, Stars scattered across the velvet sky above them as Lucas drove their wagon the short distance to their new home. Olivia leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she had never imagined possible during those dark days in Boston. The cabin welcomed them with warm light spilling from its windows. Lucas insisted on carrying Olivia across the threshold, an old tradition that made her laugh with delight. Inside, she found the main room decorated with early spring flowers and a table set for a private celebration, a bottle of champagne, 2 glasses, and a small cake. The children helped, Lucas explained, setting her gently on her feet. Emily was very specific about the flowers. Olivia moved through the cabin, taking in the details Lucas had added since her last visit: curtains at the windows, a colorful quilt on their bed, bookshelves waiting to be filled with volumes they would collect together. "It's perfect," she said, turning to find him watching her with unguarded love. "Everything is perfect." He crossed to her in 2 strides, gathering her in his arms. "You're what makes it perfect, Olivia. You've given me a home, not just a place to live." Their kiss deepened, passion no longer restrained by propriety or circumstances. They were husband and wife now, free to express the love that had grown between them since that fateful day when Ridge wind threw her from the Mule. The cowboy rolled, took the fall, and laughed with relief. Much later, lying in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Olivia traced lazy patterns on Lucas's chest as he held her close. "I never thought I'd find this," she confessed softly. "After everything that happened in Boston, I believed that kind of happiness wasn't meant for me." Lucas pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I felt the same way. After the war, after leaving New York, I thought I was meant to be alone." His arms tightened around her. "I've never been so glad to be wrong. We have our whole lives ahead of us," Olivia mused. "What do you think they'll be like?" "Full," Lucas replied thoughtfully. "Full of work and challenges. Certainly ranching is never easy, but also full of joy, of family, of building something lasting together." "Children?" she asked, a smile in her voice. "As many as you want," he promised. "Though perhaps we should wait a year or 2 before starting our family. Get used to being husband and wife first." Olivia nodded against his shoulder. "I'd like that, and I've decided about Mrs. Winthrop's letter." "Oh, I'll accept the inheritance," she said. "Not for myself, but for our future children. A small legacy from their Eastern grandparents to help with their education someday." Lucas considered this. "That seems fitting. A bridge between your past and our future." "Exactly." She yawned, the day's emotions and activities finally catching up with her. "I love you, Lucas Irving." "And I love you, Olivia Irving," he replied, the new name still sounding wonderful to both their ears. Now and always. As they drifted towards sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, the Montana wind rustled gently through the new spring leaves outside their window. But unlike that first day, when a ridge wind had thrown her from a mule and into Lucas's life, this breeze was gentle, a blessing on their union, a promise of the seasons to come, of the life they would build together in this wild, beautiful land. The following years saw the fulfillment of that promise. The small cabin expanded gradually as their family grew, first with the birth of their daughter Sarah in 1880, followed by twin boys, James and Thomas, in 1882. Lucas continued as foreman of the Turner Ranch until 1885, when Mrs. Turner officially made him a partner in the operation, acknowledging his role in its continued success. Olivia maintained her position as teacher for the Turner children until they were old enough to attend school in Bozeman. Afterward, she divided her time between raising her own children and serving on the Territorial Education Board, helping to establish proper schools throughout the region. The Blackwood brothers served their full prison terms, emerging chastened men who eventually left Montana for the goldfields of Alaska. Their father died during their incarceration, his once promising silver mine played out and his fortune squandered. When Montana achieved statehood in 1889, Lucas was among those who traveled to Helena for the celebration. By then, the Irving family had grown to include a 4th child, little Eleanor, named for the Boston friend, whose kindness had provided a small but significant legacy for the Irving children's education. Through all the changes, all the challenges and triumphs that frontier life brought them, Lucas and Olivia's love remained constant, a testament to the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together on that dusty road outside Bozeman. When Ridge wind threw her from the mule, the cowboy rolled, took the fall, and laughed with relief.